Walt Disney gave Ed Sullivan a secret envelope on February 9, 1964. For 16 years, Ed had one golden rule: never stop the show. Never break the format. Never let emotion crack his legendary composure. But 5 minutes before going live to 23 million Americans, Ed opened Walt's envelope. His hands started shaking. The stone face that never changed suddenly crumbled. What Walt Disney wrote in that letter wasn't about business. It wasn't about television. It was about an 11-year-old boy named Tommy, dying in a hospital bed, whose father's last words before being killed in Vietnam were about Ed Sullivan bringing families together. That night, Ed Sullivan did something he'd never done in 16 years of live television. He threw away the script, brought a dying child onto his stage, and asked America to help. The competitors who built empires on family entertainment were about to discover what family really meant when the cameras couldn't turn away, and the whole country became witness to the moment Ed Sullivan chose a child's life over every rule that made him untouchable. The CBS Studio 50 in New York had seen history before: Elvis's swiveling hips, the Beatles' American invasion. But on February 9, 1964, as the crew prepared for another Sunday night broadcast, no one suspected they were about to witness something that would redefine what television could be. Ed Sullivan moved through his pre-show routine with the precision of a Swiss watch. 16 years of live television had taught him that consistency was king. Check the cue cards, brief the orchestra, review the camera positions. Every Sunday, the same ritual that delivered flawless entertainment to American families gathered in living rooms from coast to coast. Tonight's lineup sparkled with typical Sullivan variety. The Supremes would perform their latest hit. Alan King had prepared 7 minutes of sharp comedy about suburban life. A Russian ballet troupe had been flown in specially from Moscow, a coup in the middle of the Cold War. And Disney's newest star, Hayley Mills, would charm audiences while promoting her upcoming film. The envelope arrived at exactly 7:50 p.m., carried by a nervous CBS page who'd been given explicit instructions. Hand-delivered to Mr. Sullivan personally. No intermediaries. The young man had worked at the network for 2 years and had never seen mail marked with such urgency, especially from Walt Disney Productions. The relationship between Ed Sullivan and Walt Disney was one of professional respect mixed with careful rivalry. They commanded the two most powerful hours in family entertainment: Sullivan on Sunday nights, Disney on Sunday evenings. They'd spoken perhaps a dozen times in 20 years, always cordially, always with the subtle tension of two kings whose kingdoms bordered each other. Ed barely glanced at the envelope initially, focused on adjusting his tie in the mirror. But the page persisted. Mr. Disney had insisted it be read before airtime. This caught Ed's attention. Walt Disney didn't send urgent messages. He certainly didn't insist on anything regarding Ed's show. The burgundy wax seal bore Walt's personal mark, not the corporate logo, but his private insignia. Ed's fingers, steady through thousands of broadcasts, worked the letter opener with unusual care. Inside, a single page of cream-colored stationery, covered in Walt's distinctive handwriting. As Ed read, the transformation was visible to everyone in the green room. The man whose expression never changed, who'd interviewed world leaders without blinking, suddenly looked vulnerable. His stage manager, Bob Precht, would later say it was like watching granite crack. Ed read the letter twice, folded it carefully, and did something unprecedented. He called for an emergency production meeting with 5 minutes until air. "We're changing the show," he said simply. "Everything changes tonight." At exactly 8:00 p.m., Ed Sullivan walked onto the stage with a letter tucked inside his jacket pocket, directly over his heart. 23 million viewers across America settled into their Sunday night ritual, unaware that the paper against his chest was about to demolish 16 years of unbreakable television protocol. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we have a really big show for you. The familiar greeting echoed through American homes, but the studio audience detected something different. Ed's voice carried an unusual weight, as if each word required effort. Instead of retreating to his customary position after the introduction, he remained center stage, a breach of his own choreography that made the director lean forward in the control booth. "Before we begin," Ed said, his hand unconsciously moving to his jacket pocket, "I need to share something with you, something that cannot wait for commercial breaks or proper timing." The teleprompter operator looked confused. These weren't the scripted words. "In the wings," Diana Ross whispered to Mary Wilson, asking if something was wrong. The orchestra conductor held his baton suspended, waiting for a cue that wasn't coming. Ed pulled out the letter and the camera caught the slight tremor in his fingers. "This afternoon I received this from Walt Disney. It concerns a young boy named Tommy Williamson, age 11, from Bakersfield, California. Tommy is dying of leukemia. The doctors have given him perhaps 2 months to live." The studio fell into absolute stillness. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. "But this isn't just about a sick child," Ed continued, his voice growing steadier as he found his purpose. "Tommy's father, Robert Williamson, was one of our own, a television cameraman who believed that bringing images of truth to American homes was worth any risk. 14 months ago, while filming a documentary about American advisors in Vietnam, Robert was killed by sniper fire. He died doing what we in television promise to do every day, showing America what it needs to see." Ed held up a small photograph that had been enclosed with the letter. The camera slowly zoomed in, revealing a sun-faded image, a young family at Disneyland, a small boy on his father's shoulders, both of them laughing in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle, frozen in a moment of perfect joy that now seemed unbearably fragile. This photograph is all Tommy has left of his father. He keeps it on his hospital nightstand, next to the television where he watches this show every Sunday night. His mother says he tells the other sick children that his daddy worked in television, that his daddy knew Ed Sullivan, that television people are family who take care of each other. Ed's voice began to crack as he continued reading from Walt's letter, each word adding weight to the moment. "Tommy's mother, Sarah Williamson, has sold everything they owned to pay for treatments. The house Robert bought with his first big assignment check. The car they drove to Disneyland for Tommy's 7th birthday. Everything except her wedding ring. And this photograph." The camera caught tears beginning to form in Ed's eyes, something the American public had never witnessed. The man who'd maintained composure through Kennedy's assassination, through McCarthyism, through personal attacks and professional crises, was coming apart on live television. "Last week," Ed continued, his voice now barely controlled, "Sarah Williamson called Disneyland, not to ask for charity. She's too proud for that. But to offer to sell her wedding ring to buy tickets. She wanted Tommy to see the place where he was happiest with his father one last time. The reservation clerk, a young woman named Margaret, listened to the whole story and then did something extraordinary. She broke company protocol and called Walt Disney at home." Ed paused, removing his glasses to wipe his eyes. Without them, he looked suddenly fragile, more human than the monument America knew every Sunday night. Walt writes that when he heard Tommy's story, he thought about his own daughters, about every father who ever lifted a child onto his shoulders to see over a crowd. He arranged everything immediately: transportation, treatment at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, a special suite at the Disneyland Hotel. But there was one problem Sarah Williamson couldn't solve. The studio audience was transfixed. Several people were openly weeping. In the control booth, the director had stopped calling shots. The cameras operated on instinct now, following the raw humanity unfolding on stage. Sarah cannot afford to miss work. If she does, she loses the health insurance that's keeping Tommy alive. She would have to choose between his final wish and his medical care. An impossible choice for any mother. Ed folded the letter carefully as if it were sacred text. "Walt Disney, my professional rival for 20 years, has never asked me for anything. We've competed for audiences, for advertisers, for the hearts of American families, but tonight he's asking me to help, not as a television host, but as a human being. He's asking if I personally, might find a way to help Sarah Williamson accompany her dying son to Disneyland without losing the job that keeps him in treatment. Ed turned to face stage left, and his next words changed everything. Ladies and gentlemen, I've already answered Walt's request. Tommy Williamson isn't in California tonight. Tommy is here. A small figure appeared in the wings, seated in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse in white. The studio gasped collectively as Tommy Williamson was wheeled onto the stage of the Ed Sullivan Show, his thin frame drowning in a Captain America t-shirt that had clearly fit him once, before the disease began its terrible work. But his eyes were alive with wonder, fixed on Ed Sullivan with an expression of such pure amazement that even the camera operators had to steady themselves. This was the man his father had talked about, the Sunday night voice that meant America was watching, together, as one family. Ed Sullivan did something then that shattered every rule of his professional existence. He walked over to Tommy's wheelchair and got down on his knees, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. The great Ed Sullivan, who stood tall before presidents and kings, knelt on his own stage like a grandfather meeting his grandson. "Tommy," he said, his voice gentle now, stripped of all performance, "I knew your father. He was a brave man who believed that showing the truth was worth any sacrifice. And Walt Disney wants you to know that Disneyland isn't just waiting for you. You're going to become an honorary citizen of the Magic Kingdom." Sarah Williamson emerged from the wings, and the dignity in her posture, despite her visible exhaustion, made the moment even more devastating. She wore a simple black dress, carefully pressed, probably her only good dress. Her face showed the exhaustion of 14 months of widowhood, of watching her child fade, of impossible choices no parent should face. "Mrs. Williamson," Ed stood, taking her hand in both of his, "your husband died serving this country's need to know the truth. We owe you a debt we can never fully repay." Then Ed Sullivan, the man who never broke, completely shattered. The tears came freely now, streaming down his face as he turned back to the camera, to America. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do something I've never done in 16 years. I'm going to stop this show and ask for your help. If you believe, as I do, that we are one American family, call this network. Send what you can to help the Williamsons. Not charity, but family, taking care of family." Before he could continue, Diana Ross burst from the wings, not scheduled for another 20 minutes. She ran to Tommy's wheelchair and knelt beside it, taking his small hand in both of hers. Mary Wilson and Florence Ballard followed, and the Supremes surrounded the boy like guardian angels. "We're going to sing for you, Tommy," Diana said, her voice breaking. "Just for you." Without orchestra, without accompaniment, the Supremes began to sing "Someday We'll Be Together" in perfect harmony, their voices filling Studio 50 with unexpected grace. Tommy's face transformed, a smile breaking through that seemed to light the entire theater. The cameras captured it all, not as television, but as witness to something sacred unfolding in real time. The phone banks at CBS exploded. Within minutes, every line was jammed. The network would later report receiving over 100,000 calls in the first hour alone. Alan King walked onto the stage without introduction, abandoning his comedy routine. "Let me tell you about Robert Williamson," he said simply. "I met him in Saigon. America needs to know who this man was." For the next 10 minutes, the Ed Sullivan Show became something unprecedented. A spontaneous memorial, a celebration of courage, a moment when performance dissolved into pure humanity. The Russian ballet troupe announced through their translator that they would dedicate their American tour to Tommy. Haley Mills read a personal message from Walt Disney himself, promising that when Tommy visited Disneyland, he wouldn't be a guest. He would be royalty. By the next morning, $2.7 million had been donated, not just for Tommy, but to establish the Robert Williamson Memorial Fund for children of fallen journalists and cameramen. Tommy got his trip to Disneyland, a week that Walt Disney personally orchestrated, ensuring every magical moment possible. The photographs from that week became legendary. Tommy meeting Mickey Mouse in a special ceremony, riding attractions from a custom wheelchair, having lunch with Walt in his secret apartment above the fire station. Tommy lived 4 months longer than doctors predicted, passing away peacefully on July 4, 1964. His mother later said those extra months were a gift from the joy of that week, from knowing America had embraced them, from Ed Sullivan breaking his golden rule. Diana Ross sang at his funeral, a small service that Ed Sullivan quietly paid for entirely. But the true legacy runs deeper than money raised or wishes granted. That February night proved that even in our most controlled moments, humanity can break through. That the greatest power in broadcasting isn't perfect production, but perfect compassion. Ed Sullivan discovered that his real talent wasn't maintaining composure, but knowing when to let it go completely. The envelope Walt Disney sent Ed Sullivan now rests in the Smithsonian, but its message needs no museum. Sometimes the script must be thrown away. Sometimes professional distance must collapse into human closeness. Sometimes the show must stop for something more important than ratings, for love, for dignity, for a dying child whose father gave everything to bring America the truth. That night, television fulfilled its highest purpose, making us all truly family.